Well, we finally arrived at the final chapter of the Beis HaLevi, his incredibly inspiring and grounding Maimer on B'tochen, a discourse on certainty that God Almighty is taking care of us, has been taking care of us, and is always going to take care of us. And we're going to pull it up over here. Last few times we were discussing what having certainty that God Almighty is taking care of us, what trusting in God Almighty means for us in terms of saving us for different types of transgressions. One being flattery. Flattery is the misplacing our trust in another human being and therefore thinking that we need something from that person and therefore needing to be dishonest in the way we speak to that person. That is a transgression that happens, and it's something that's repulsive to every human being. Flattery, even the person who's being flattered, as we learned, go back and watch those videos. You're not doing anyone any service if you do flattery. And we're saved from that if we believe and know with certainty that God Almighty is taking care of us at every moment. Similarly, we learned last week that certainty that God Almighty is taking care of us is something that saves us from jealousy, because we know and we are certain that God Almighty is taking care of me and he's taking care of you, and therefore I have everything I need. There's nothing that I am lacking. And just because you have more than me in a particular area is not something that's judgment against you. It's really God Almighty decided it that way. So I'm not missing anything. I don't need what you have. And I don't have to now try to be envious and jealous and now try to take away what you have or try to outcompete you and try to get what I have in order to fulfill my need to feel I'm okay, because I know I'm okay. God Almighty has provided me everything I need. Now, there's nothing wrong with having an aspiration or ambition. It says the Torah teaches us that one who has 100 wants 200. So God Almighty planted us in us ambition. And we're going to see, the question is, well, what do we want to use our ambition for? What do we want to use this ability to apply ourselves to different activities into different directions? What exactly do we want to use that for? So there's nothing wrong with using and motivation and being motivated and wanting to do things, but it doesn't need to be out of jealousy. Instead, it can be out of recognizing that God Almighty is giving me energy, divine energy, and asking him, how does he want me to use it right now? That is what is meant to be driving us. So let's look inside here. As I said, we came to the 30th and final chapter. We're going to continue with a little bit more in the coming weeks with some further analysis or discussion of Joseph and being in the prison in Egypt. We'll learn some insights, more detailed insights on that. And then we're going to recap with going through all the lessons that we learned, a summary of a statement for each one of the lessons. And then we're going to go through the verses in the Torah that are bringing us this reassurance and this assurance and this implanting in us and awakening us to the trust that we really naturally have, the certainty that God Almighty is taking care of us. It's not something that we have to train ourselves from the outside, but rather it's something that we have inside of us innately, that God Almighty is implanted in each one of us. But the Torah verses are focusing our thinking on that, what we already know. So let's pull up over here today's page 30, paragraph 30. And we start here on the right side. Lamed. There's a general principle, great general principle that is said in the verse, and this is in the book of Job, chapter 5, verse 7. Pull that up also. We see over here, we're looking here at the book of Job, chapter 5, verse 7. Ki adam la'amal yulad, uvnei reshef yagabihu uf. Because man was born to labor, to do work. Now, they translate it over here as trouble, but amal means having to exert effort, having to focus our energy and intention on something, and to engage our our divine energy into something that's going to produce results. And that is Ki Adam L'Amul Yulad is a general principle. It's a great general principle. The Beis HaLevi is telling us that a man was created to labor, to exert effort. The question we have to ask ourselves is, now before you all run out and now say, okay, I'm supposed to go, let me get busy, right? I'm supposed to be laboring, let me get busy. Well, no, that's not the answer. We have to see, what are we supposed to be busy with? We come back over here to the Beis HaLevi saying, V'amru b'midrash, and it says in the Midrash, which is brought, this is a collection of the oral Torah, and brought in the Talmud in Sanhedrin on the 99th page on the second side. Zocha, if a person is meritorious, la'amul Torah, his merit will be that his labor, his effort, exertion is going to be in Torah. Lo zacha la'amul derech eretz. If he's not meritorious, he is going to have to labor in the derech eretz. Literally means the path of the world, the path of the land, which means to say the work of the world. Have to be a farmer or a businessman or a providing some sort of services to people. That is that's the choice. We have two options. You're going to have to labor. You're going to labor in Torah, or you're going to labor in doing things in the physical world. Now, it's interesting to note, as we've discussed before, that it says that when Mashiach comes, when the redemption comes to the entire world, that the sole occupation of the entire world is going to be knowing God Almighty. That's going to be the entire occupation. So that we have a choice right now between, we're going to see it's a choice, but there's two options in terms of how to apply our labor, whether to labor in Torah and divine insights, or to be laboring in the ways of the world, in income generating activity, is the way the world now has these two options. But when Mashiach is going to come, when the redemption is going to come, we're all going to be solely occupied with the Torah, with learning about God Almighty. And so it's interesting to see that it's only a temporary state that we are given this choice. But when Mashiach is going to come, we're not going to have a choice. We're just all going to be, and eagerly and happily, involved in greater and greater divine insights and insights into the divine. So going back to what the Beis HaLevi is saying over here, Dehine Yitzirase Shel Ha'adam Ikaroi Hurak Liyagia Va'amal. The formation of man, the root of it, is only for striving and this effort, this labor. Rak habechira talui boy, but the choice is dependent on the person. Be'eza amal yivchar, which effort and labor is he going to choose to engage in, right? So we have, each one of us is a person who's designed to be putting effort into life and effort into the world. And the question is, which one are we going to choose to do? If his effort is going to be in Torah, then he's not going to be needing to get into the amolay, meaning to say the labor of Olam Hazeh, this world. Like it says in the Ethics of the Fathers, chapter 3, anyone who accepts upon themselves the yoke of Torah is removed from him, literally broken off him, the yoke of human kings and the yoke of derech eretz, meaning to say having to work in the world. On the contrary, however, on the opposite side of things, if he breaks off from himself the yoke of Torah, who rak machlif amal Torah b'amal shel derech eretz. He's only exchanging the labor and the effort that is required to be able to learn Torah, to learn God Almighty's divine wisdom. He's exchanging that for the labor of activities in this world, income-generating activities in this world. Amram, like the sages say, Ani omel u'makabel schar. I am laboring. This is referring to a person who is dedicating himself. He's made the choice that he's going to learn Torah. He is laboring, and he is receiving reward, schar. He's receiving spiritual payment. But the other people who are choosing to run after matters of the world, they're also laboring, but they're not receiving the spiritual reward and benefit of the choice for applying ourselves to knowing God. So the key over here is to recognize that we have a choice. We don't have a choice whether we're going to be involved in striving and whether we're going to be involved in labor. That's not an option. Meaning to say, we are born that way, and even after Mashiach comes, we're going to be all involved in some form of labor. The question is, what are we going to labor us in? What are we going to choose to labor ourselves in? So we can take that energy. I got to do something. I want to do something, right? We all want to do something, right? You see when you have children, you see a child says, "Mommy, Tati, Ima, Dad, I am bored," right? What do you mean you're bored? What's wrong with being bored? We all wish we were bored, right? But they're bothered by they're bored because they want to do something. They haven't. God Almighty created us with this energy. I want to be doing something. I want to be busy with something. Now, we all want to learn that the busyness that we are aiming for doesn't have to be spinning our wheels type of busyness, doing something for the sake of doing something. Meaning to say, the striving could be in a calm and reflective way. We could be sitting calmly, reflecting, and be open to greater and greater insights into the divine. That's also a form of exerting ourselves, labor, meaning to say, instead of just going and saying, I'm going to waste time, person can devote their energy to greater and greater insights. And there's an unlimited number of insights because our awareness of godliness is infinite, because God is infinite. So the Beis HaLevi is bringing this complete circle, because the whole purpose of his writing this is to bring about an awareness of the fact of the certainty and that we have that God Almighty is taking care of us, and he's going to continue to take care of us. So we discussed, well, what kind of effort is necessary? What kind of effort do you need to make a living? You can go back to watch the previous chapters where we discussed that. How much effort do we have to put in? Well, we said that God Almighty created us that we have to do something, because otherwise, if we don't have to do anything, we're not busy with something, then our natural tendency is actually to dissipate our energy and to get involved in things that we should not be involved in. So God Almighty created a busyness project, a bit like a make work project, right? He's making us work in order that we should be busy. And it's very interesting. What's the word for having a business? Is busyness. You get up in the morning, you got to go be busy with something. So it's a busyness. That's amazing. That's what the word says. So why do we have to be busy? Because it's a babysitting service where God Almighty is saying to us, listen, my dear human being, if you're not busy, you're going to end up completely taking yourself off track and you're going to destroy yourself from the distractions. So instead, apply yourself to be busy. But then the question, now he brings it full circle. So now we know our income, everything's coming from God Almighty, and our efforts are only required because we are in this divine babysitting service. And now we see the benefits of it. We see the benefits of how things were saved from by trusting God Almighty. And now the question is, really, what decision do we want to make about where we apply our busyness? Where do we want to apply that effort? And the Beis HaLevi is suggesting that we do have a choice. He's telling us as a definitive matter we have a choice, but he's suggesting that the better choice is to choose the one where our striving, our energy is devoted towards knowing God Almighty and knowing more about God Almighty, and to knowing more about it. It's how God Almighty's created us, and knowing what the divine and our soul and all the aspects and about the commandments. God Almighty has gifted every human being to be able to connect to God Almighty and to connect to our fellow human being. This is where our effort should be. You're going to be putting effort anyways. And this is a key point to remember, because we all, in modern times, there's this thing called vacation. I need a break. I need a vacation. And you see, it used to be that people worked 7 days a week. And God Almighty comes and tells the particularly Jewish people, but tells everyone to remember that he rested on the seventh day. He didn't work 7 days. He worked 6 days to create the world and rested on the seventh. He tells the Jewish people that they have to refrain from all labor on the seventh day. And he tells the world as a whole, including the Jewish people, including the non-Jews, to remember the seventh day. Because you have to know that this is divine reality, that you're being created intentionally at every moment. And the evidence of that is that God Almighty is he's not stuck in a endless loop. He's making a decision to create, and he's making a decision what he's not going to create. So it's intentional. And you're an intentional created being created by God Almighty. So that is, God comes and says, don't work all the time. Take a day of reflection to focus on the fact that there is a higher order. There's a high, God Almighty has created the world from beyond creation, and he is communicating to all of us within creation. So, but the point is that you have to kind of like interpose into a human being's natural state would be to work 7 days a week. God Almighty has to come and tell us, hey, I created you to work, but there's time when you need to be more reflective. And if you go to a farming community, you see that they work 7 days, even those that take a day out of the week off, but they still have their responsibilities for the farm animals, and farmers don't take vacations. It's very complicated to go and leave a farm. You have to bring someone else to watch all the animals, and he has to know what he's doing. And farmer is really, it's a full-time commitment. So what's happening in our times is a false idea, phony ideology coming in that working is somehow a bad thing, and that we are all supposed to be on vacation. Like the working is the bad thing, and we all have to all, like, we're looking all forward for a time off. We want as much time off as possible. And then they come up with national holidays. Now it's almost a national holiday every month, right? This is all antithetical to the way people used to think. There was no national holidays. In 1750, there was no national holidays. There was basically, people got up and were glad to work every day. And maybe there was 1 or 2 religious holidays a year where a person didn't work, and some people took off 1 day a week. But the idea of taking off every month 1 day from a productive work week off, and now they say, oh, see, not only should you have a day off as a Sabbath day, but you should have a whole weekend off. So it's 2 days. And then in Europe, now they talk about a 4-day work week, and they're really extending the weekend to 3 days and 4 days. And why are people going to work so much, and reducing the hours of work and longer vacations and time off and so forth. So is this really the direction we're supposed to be going in? So the intention, it's interesting when people have a negative intention, by divine providence, it coincides with externally certain aspects of what God's intention is, but we have to make sure we don't get distracted by what the negative intentions are. So let me tell you what I mean. So comes along this whole ideology, we should be working less, we should be working less, we should be working less. Working is not a desirable thing to do. People are pushed off from working. It used to be, my father went to work when he was 11 years old. Now you have 21-year-olds and 25-year-olds that don't have a job. They're still, quote unquote, studying. So the whole attitude is moved again from work. Work will start later in life to work. You can't even get a job in where we live. You have to get some permission from the state for a teenager to work. It's just all kinds of anti-work attitudes. The problem here is that what the ideology is, and the falseness of the ideology is that we should be free from any work and just kind of like zone out. The lie on the beach type attitude. And the problem with that is it leads to just people are by nature, by definition, unhappy and unsettled because we were created to labor. The godly vision is that every human being is going to transition from being busy in busyness to being freed from the busyness, but instead being laboring and applying themselves to Torah. So that's what I mean when I said earlier that there's the false ideology is promoting working less. That coincides with God Almighty's vision that we all are going to do that kind of work less. But what God Almighty wants us to do is work less in the world, the physical world, and do more work in the spiritual realms of learning God Almighty's divine wisdom. But the false ideology breaks our commitment to work and then replaces it with a vacuum. And the vacuum leads to chaos and to destruction. So now you have a 25-year-old who has no work ethic because he was told from 11 years old he has a childhood, he can't work, and 12-year-olds and 13-year-old and 14-year-old, and he's not allowed to work long hours. Look what they tell us. In the old days, people worked as a matter of course to work 60, 70, 80, 90 hours a week. That was just natural. No one thought anything wrong with it. Then they came along with the whole ideology. Oh, it's illegal to work more than 40 hours a week, and we're going to penalize the person who offers a job to someone who wants to work more than 40 hours. We're going to penalize them by making them pay 50% more. So now people can't get, in order to work that 50% more, to work more hours, they have to go take a second job, and the employer has to find a second set of employees because he can't afford to pay everyone time and a half. So the workers are forced to take two jobs, and the employer is forced to get two sets of employees. But the attitude is against working more. The attitude is, oh, now you're going to come home. Now, what do they do when they come home? 40 hours, 9 to 5. And then they leave early on Fridays. Come home and they watch television. Now they're just open receptacles to whatever is being promoted into their minds, which is all against God and all against their humanity, all against the divine image in them, leading to destruction, showing examples of and modeling destructive behavior by men and women and by children, and people are left in a descending, spiraling descent of chaos. So the answer is, we need to, and we see also, I mean, terrible stuff going on. See, in the places where the industry has moved out of towns, we see the massive drug usage and massive opiate usage because the people are not working. There's nothing for them to do. They've left the land. They don't work anymore in terms of the land. They leave it living in houses, and they don't have to work for their basic sustenance because the government's providing it for them. And the end result is that there's just chaos in their lives. So what, my friends, is the answer over here? The answer is to return to the Torah principle that we were built and born and created to labor and to work. That's the way God Almighty created us. Now, let's harness ourselves We can make a choice. Choice is to be busy with the busyness in the world, or to be busy with learning about the divine. There is no living alternative, meaning to say the alternative of having nothing to do is really not a life alternative. When he says that you could have to labor, and you could labor in the world or labor in Torah, he's only presenting two options. Well, there is a third option, which is not to labor in anything, but that's not called life. That person is not fulfilling what he was born for, which is to labor. So now we have to recognize this for ourselves. We have to recognize that we have to raise our kids. We have to see the insidious influences that are telling our kids, don't do any labor, no work. Everything's a hobby, a game. Everything is just free time. We need to say, no. There's no such thing as that. There's no such thing as we're just here to waste our time. We're here for a purpose. We're laborers in this world to be able to apply our divine gifts and the divine powers that we've been given of thought and speech and action. Our job is to labor to refine them and to direct them to the positive, to direct them to divine purposes. If you are going to choose to use those powers to go and open a store, or to get a job and be of service to people, or prepare a product, then that is one. It's at least you're harnessing your energy and what God Almighty's put in you. The alternative is to take all that energy, all the thought, speech, and action, and instead devote it into the service of God Almighty through learning more and more about God. And if you do that, you will be freed from the obligation, the rulership of kings, and you'll be freed from of human kings, and be freed from the rulership of the yoke of labor in the world. So what we need to do is we need to bring this message to every single human being. Because what really needs to happen is, let's say you have a town where everyone's out of work. So most people are out of work. So we have malls, shopping centers that are empty because there's no customers to buy the stuff, and they're empty. We need to go to the owners of those shopping malls and say, we want to use your space to bring everyone from the town to sit and we're going to have Torah classes that apply to all the non-Jews every day. We'll have classes starting at 8:30 in the morning, some prayer. We're going to learn, and we're going to learn about God, and people will come and go as they want through the day. And the shop, we're going to say, how are we going to afford all this? Well, the fact of the matter is, think about it for a second. The shopping mall owner is going to be happy to give the space at no or very little charge, because he's going to bring his parking lot's going to be full of people. And now someone is going to have a nail salon, and someone's going to have a grocery store, and someone's going to have a barber shop. And all these things are going to be there because people are going to be coming in. The whole town's going to come to learn every day. So we need to show people that when the manufacturing was taken away and outsourced overseas, it's not that the human beings became obsolete. The human beings became even more relevant, because now you have the option, and it's more clearly that you have the option, that you don't have the option like your father and your grandfather to be a coal miner or a steel worker or an iron worker. That's not an option. Or even making cars. All these things are no longer, in many places, are completely obsolete or going obsolete. You have to show them, no, now you can do something your grandfather and father didn't have the opportunity to do. You have the opportunity to apply your power of your energy, your divine energy of effort, into applying yourself to learning the Torah that applies to every single human being. And this is what we are going to be doing. That is going to build that's the transition into the times of Mashiach, to the times of redemption, because those people that right now are tragically using opiates or using alcohol because in the lack of something to do with themselves are truly feeling unfulfilled and feeling desperate, innocently so, because they don't know what else they're supposed to do, and not that they can't see anything else to do. We have the opportunity to bring to the forefront the divinity in each one of those people, and that they should become productive learners of and strivers in the learning of the Torah that applies to every single human being. So this is also the answer to the false lies of phony ideologies that talk about useless human beings, and with the robots we're not going to need so many human beings. On the contrary, every human being that's freed up from laboring in the world is now open to laboring in Torah. And that's what we have to tell every human being, every person, that he's not obsolete, because he wasn't created. Wasn't only one option. A human being was created to make shoes, and now the shoes are made by machines, so therefore the human being is obsolete. No, that's a lie. The human being was created to bring the divine image into the world and glorify God Almighty in the world, and to learn about God Almighty, and that's now he's freed up to do that. So I want to encourage everyone who's watching this now and live, and who is going to watch this in on video later on, to apply this. Let's look around your neighborhood. For sure, you're going to see that there's people who have nothing to do with their time, according to the way they've been taught, and they are spending their time either at home, watching TV, or hungover, or in endless fights, or they are standing around on the street corners, or they're being told, it's interesting, what do they tell people? They tell everyone, oh, the youth need basketball courts. The youth need sports facilities to keep themselves occupied. Well, that's not really what the people are supposed to be occupied in. People are supposed to be occupied, those youth that they don't have anything else to do, they should be sitting and learning Torah. There's nothing wrong with throwing a ball around. But if that becomes the sole occupation of the person, that his whole use of his divine powers is to chase a ball, he's also missing out. And the government and all these nonprofits are encouraging that by saying, oh, what he needs is better sports facilities. No, what he needs is to know that he's created in God Almighty's divine image, and that the greatest use of his energy is to learn about that, and learn about God, and learn about his soul, and learn about how he could be of service in bringing this message to every single human being. So what I'm asking everyone to do is to send me an email at info@rabbismith.org about a place that you've located, an empty building, an empty storefront, and a group of people that you know could be invited to come to this, and we will work together to set that up. We're going to have to take actions to speak to the landlord, to get in the tables and chairs. People can learn, and we will start that. And you may say to yourself, well, who's going to do the teaching? So with modern technology, we have two things. One is that you could learn what you need to learn to teach them. And the second of all is that we could have 500 or 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 of these all through the United States. And just like we're learning here right now, we could have it broadcast into each, we could have a screen on each one of those places. And the class that we're learning is broadcast into 100,000 storefronts, where everyone's sitting, there'll be hundreds of people in each place. Some of these storefronts, they're empty, old, massive shopping centers, Pathmarks and A&Ps and all these kind of things. You could fit easily 1,000 people there. So that's what we need to do. So the first step is that we're learning from the Beis HaLevi that this is the real, we can have certainty knowing God Almighty is taking care of us, and he's giving us the option. When we see things changing in the world, we know it's now opening us up for God Almighty telling us that now's the time. This is the greatest time in the world to have more children. In fact, the idolaters and those with the false ideologies will say, you see, useless human beings, time to have less kids. God Almighty has the opposite message. Now, all your children are going to be completely freed up and you're able to dedicate them from their birth into the service of God Almighty by knowing that they're born to labor and they can labor in the knowledge of God Almighty. Bring more kids into the world. Let's fill up these shopping centers. Let's fill up the arenas with people learning Torah. That is what the world is going to look like. So it's up to you, the viewer, to help make this happen. I'm here. God Almighty has given us the gift to be able to learn and to teach. And now we need to bring this message of hope to every single human being. So I want to ask you, I hope we'll be flooded with emails. Name of a shopping center, name of a place that's available. And God willing, you'll help identify the place, you'll help identify the people, and we can work together on the coming up with the right materials to help draw people to come and learn. And we'll find a sponsor to sponsor the coffee, and we will create these, and we could start them. There's nothing stopping us from starting them immediately. So my blessing to you is that you'll take this action, because when you take this action, this is the true way to move out of the fear that's being promoted, that we're being replaced by AI, we're being replaced by computers, we're being replaced by robots. What's going to be with me? What's going to be with my kids? That's fear. And that fear is designed to make you retract. The only way to deal with fear is to move into action. To have the courage to say, yes, it's scary, the ideas that they're presenting, but I'm not scared by them because I know God Almighty's taking care of me. And he's doing this. This is happening. These evil ideas are having upper hand temporarily, it looks like, in order to give me the opportunity to now move in to the vacuum they're creating with the message that God Almighty has. And then we're going to see that all those attempts to try to marginalize the significance of a human being are going to be completely nahafachu, turned over to see the greatness of a human being and every single human being. And the more human beings that are created, the greatness of the human being will be even more evident, both as individuals and human beings as a whole. So this is your opportunity to move out of the paralysis of thinking what's going on in the world and what's going to be, and so forth, to actually be implementing this incredible transition of the world. And let's make it happen. We have this incredible blessing from God Almighty that he's shared with us his vision through the Torah and through the prophets, and now we live in the times that this is entirely and uniquely possible, that every human being is going to be uplifted from this message that they are here to labor, and the labor is meant to be in using out all their divine gifts in the service of God Almighty and in the service of their fellow human being. God bless you all. Any questions? Okay, now, thank you for the comment over here. This is a very inspiring message. Everyone who hears this be motivated to action. And as we know, each one of us has the ability to have more people hear this message. Make sure to share this message. If you're watching this later on, you can subscribe, like the video, and share it. Share the message. Make sure everyone watches to the end. And put your heads together with your friends and people that are not yet your friends. And say, you all know someone that's out of work. Send them this message and say, let's get a place together. Let's do it this week. Let's start today's Thursday morning. We can start tomorrow morning. You can start in your living room. And by next Monday, you can have convinced the landlord that the real Lord, the Lord of the land, is God Almighty. And God Almighty has entrusted him with this resource, which is an improvement on the land, a structure for the purpose that should be resounding with the sound of the learning of Torah that applies to every single human being. There's every landlord that's presented to him this way. We're presenting him with a gift. We're not coming with him with, we need the space. Please help us out. We're saying we're here to help you. We're to help you to fulfill the purpose of the fact that this building was built, was to bring hope to every single human being. And every landlord is going to be enthusiastic and embrace this and make sure the snow is cleared and make sure the lights are running and make sure that as many people as possible are brought in, and even more than possible are brought in to fill their location with the sounds of people happily and eagerly learning about God Almighty and learning about themselves and learning about how they could be of service to and grow their families and grow the incredible gift of the human enterprise. So thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Rabbi, yes. What would you say to someone who hears the call and is inspired by your message and wants to take action, but feels in themselves that they're not learned enough yet, or frum enough, or they're still learning, they're just beginning on their journey back to Torah, or is halfway on their journey back to Torah and learning mitzvah and halakha and everything, and may feel inadequate to take action, like you have suggested? What would you say to such a person?
Well, those are the tricks of the trade. The tricks of the trade of the one who comes to dissuade us from doing the right thing. That voice inside of us, that the death energy, the Yetzer Hara, which is the death energy that wants us to stay small, wants us to think, oh, we're so humble. And the fact of the matter is that just like if you were walking down the street right now and you saw someone fell in the road, and you wouldn't say, oh, I don't know how to carry a person, I didn't take the course on how to check there, I don't have any skills in traffic control, and maybe no one's going to stop for me, and I don't know. You could come up with 150 different reasons why you're not going to help that person. But that is not what you're thinking. You're thinking, I got to save this person's life. So you're going to run into the street, you're going to grab the person, you're going to stop the traffic, whatever it is necessary to do it based on exactly the circumstances. And by the way, you can't plan these circumstances in advance. And you're never going to know enough, because every circumstance that God Almighty presents you with is going to be completely new and unique. The speed of the traffic, what happened to this person exactly, all these kind of things are going to be new, even for people who are occupied in these type of rescue activities 24 hours a day. Everyone is a new learning experience. So the difference is we just throw ourselves into it. If you know enough to watch this video and to be inspired by the message, it shows you that this is not dependent on how much you know. And I'm not saying that you have to teach the class. I'm saying I'm willing to teach the class. So you don't have to say, oh, what am I going to say in answer to questions? And people ask me questions all the time I don't know the answer to, because we're talking about the infinite divine. How could I possibly come to learning together Torah with you and say, I know all the answers of all the questions you're possibly going to ask? Because even on the subject, some people ask questions that are off topic. And then who says I'm going to know the answer? And even on the topic that we're learning together and I prepare for, who says I'm going to know the answer to the question? So that kind of thinking is what keeps us small. That's what keeps the world in exile, because each one of us is keeping ourselves personally in exile from that thinking. And the answer is not how much you know, it's how much you care and how much you're willing to allow that caring about God Almighty and caring about your fellow human being to overcome your own self-interest in the egotistical thoughts of, well, I don't know enough, and I'm this, and I don't know, and what, people are going to listen to me. It's all about me when I'm thinking those thoughts. Me doesn't know enough. Me is this, and me is that. Me is busy, right? Who am I thinking about? I'm thinking about me. So when we see the emergency, and we see the opportunity, and we hear God Almighty's message to every single human being, then we are not. I am not going to think about me. I'm going to be thinking about you. I'm thinking about God Almighty. I'm thinking about the every single human being. How can I be of service? How can I now do something that's going to bring hope to their lives? And maybe I never called a landlord before. Maybe I never turned on the lights in a storefront before. Maybe I never unfolded a table before. Maybe I don't know how to make coffee. Maybe I don't know how to plow the snow and shovel the snow in the front of the walkway so people can come and learn. Maybe I don't know how to talk to people. Maybe I don't speak English. Maybe there's many different things I don't know. But that's all irrelevant, because you don't know how to speak English, or you don't, whatever language in whatever place you're at that they speak, doesn't matter. You just we'll come up with a flyer for you, and you'll point excitedly that we're learning about God, and they'll get the point that there's something good going on over here. and you'll drag them in or bring the learning right to the basketball court or to wherever they're hanging out. So this is key. And one of the things that's really important about this and why this is so essential also is because we are, how's the best way to say this? Modern technology has a blessing that we can now learn Torah together across continents. But there's one drawback is that you don't actually have to get out of your house and go and sit in the same room as another person. And that creates isolation. So on one hand, we are advancing God Almighty's message in the world by being able to learn anytime, any place. But the disadvantage is that we have the crutch of not actually having to go and learn with other people. And we can do it in our house. And here, what we really want to do is we want to inspire people to leave their houses and come to learn together, because the learning together is where the divine presence is revealed in a much more revealed way. And that is where people can receive even more hope than watching a wonderful Torah message on a video in the privacy of their own home. So this is critical, not only in the content that we are sharing, but it's critical in the format, that the format move out of Zoom. Although, we could have the class delivered in Zoom because it can't be in 100,000 different locations at once, except through Zoom. But the people that are learning should definitely aim to be in the same room together. And you could do that. You can make that happen. You know how to, whatever, life is simple. Whatever you need to do right now, God Almighty is giving you the skill, has given you the skills and the power to be able to accomplish whatever it is that you need to do right now. Oh, we're going to have access to the store. So first of all, you could definitely invite people to your home. First of all, there's storefronts all over the place that are empty. So you don't have access to a storefront only because you didn't present this idea to the landlord. So there's no problem accessing storefronts. Storefronts are available for use all over the place and empty all over the place. So that's not a problem, other than you just haven't done that yet. The advantage of inviting people to your home is that you are, you already have a house, thank God, and you should do that. But the disadvantage of the house is that, number one, is you always are going to have people coming in and out. You're going to be giving your address all over the city, and you don't necessarily know the state of mind of every person that's coming into your house. And sometimes your class is going to go longer. Maybe if they're going to come to a storefront, and we're going to have learning from 9 to 5 or 9 to 7, 8 to 7, whatever it is. We'll have other rabbis teaching also. Then you don't have to have your front door open all the time. Now, Abraham and Sarah did. And if that's something that your family can handle and you feel comfortable with that, then that's great. But there could be other situations that leads to complications. For example, if you're home, your husband's out at work, and you have men coming to your house, there could be problems with yichud in a home situation. You have your kids at home, you may not feel comfortable of having people come in that you don't know what they're talking about, what they're looking at on their phones, what they're doing, what you don't. It's much harder to open your house on that type of basis. However, if that's all you have, then you work out with your family how to do that in a way that's going to be very, very enhancing your family, and letting your kids see it live, that you're making your home open and so forth, is a beautiful thing. I'm not telling you that you shouldn't have your home open, but I'm just saying why a storefront has advantages over the home. The home is maybe where you could invite people that you can have them over for a meal and stuff like that, and or do classes if you don't have a storefront. But the other point about the cost involved, I'm saying this we can make this a zero cost activity. Now, think about it for a second. The landlord is going to give the space at no charge. The cost of the electricity with the modern LED lights and stuff like that in these storefronts is, he doesn't need special spotlights for display cases and stuff like that, is very small. the advantages he's getting back in return, just on the, besides the tremendous spiritual advantages, but the physical advantages of foot traffic in his area, and inspiring people to get closer to God Almighty. So there's going to be less crime, there's going to be less violence. Everyone is going to benefit from this. So there's no reason the landlord is going to say this is not what he'll pay for the heating, he'll pay for the gas, he'll pay for the water. That's what I believe is going to happen, and let's put this into effect and try this out and make sure, and we're going to see if people are going to see this and they're going to want to do this. He's going to plow the snow. Anything that the tenant would normally be required to pay, he's going to plow the snow because he wants his lot full, because then he shows, if he could show there's 1,000 cars in his lot every day, he can now go to every single cellular phones company, every single personal care store, restaurants, pizza stores, everyone, come, donut stores, ice cream stores. I got 1,000 cars in my lot. He could rent out every single place, in his place. So there's no question that the landlord is going to see the advantage of this. And this is why, by the way, you see, God Almighty bless certain people to be landlords, because they see these kind of things that you and I are thinking about. We're going to call it, we're driving down the road, landlord, how much does it cost? We're thinking as not as business people, but he's thinking about profit. How is he going to make profit? Foot traffic. He's all kinds of calculations that exactly line up with what we're doing here. But now what about the costs of the coffee? You're going to find sponsors. If every person who comes there every day puts $1 a day into the pushka, into the tzedakah charity box there to support these activities, you're going to say, well, these people are unemployed. But the people who are unemployed are buying fancy TVs. They're buying opiates. They're buying drugs. They're buying alcohol. They are going to have so much free money, available money, once they don't need the opiates anymore. Once they don't need the TV set anymore. They're not going to need the alcohol anymore. They're going to have money available to support this. They're driving cars. They're paying leases on new cars and pickups and so on and so forth. So there's definitely money. Most people in the United States of America, even the unemployed, are not destitute, that they're walking around in bare feet. And if there is someone who's walking around in bare feet, they're also welcome. And they're going to benefit from the generosity of the other human beings around them. So I don't think there's any issue of the cost involved. Each one of these is going to be self-supporting through its own contributions. And the people who come are going to support. People who in the mall are going to support it. The people who are going to, the landlords are going to support it. Everyone's is just going to see this. There's no new construction involved. You get some folding tables. There's plenty of places to have folding tables that are not using them. It really could be done at close to a zero cost, and the more people contribute, the more it will be enhanced. Do we envision such a location open Monday to Friday? Well, 7 days a week. Why not 7 days a week, including Shabbos? The Shabbos, we can't broadcast the learning on Shabbos because we can't use the Zoom and the TV and so forth, the technology. But first of all, there's plenty of learning materials that could be printed out in advance, and people could do a review of what they learned during the week. We could have a translation of many of the things that we're learning available. People could learn it, discuss it. It'd be incredible, absolutely incredible. So there's no problem. Shabbos, the non-Jews are able to drive on Shabbos. They can come on Shabbos. If there's 10 Jewish men within walking distance, they could put together a congregational prayer that the non-Jews could attend, and they could have the Torah reading and so forth. So there's many things that could grow out of this that are going to be of benefit to everybody. So I think it'd be done every day of the week. How do we advertise in the community? So first of all, every community has these community bulletins. Every community has local newspapers, local flyers. Usually they have discounts for nonprofits and for spiritually oriented activities. And there's Facebook groups that are community oriented, local groups, and there's different WhatsApp chats of the mothers that the mothers in this grade and mothers in that grade and the fathers here, and all you need to do is ask around how do you communicate with your neighbors? And then there's the simple old-fashioned way, which is taking a flyer, printing it out, and dropping it off in everyone's house. And in the rural areas, all the mailboxes are right on the road, so you don't even have to go onto each person's private property. It's just drive along and drop in everyone's mailbox. So and then everyone who comes is going to invite more people. Okay, great. It's great spending this time with you. God bless you all. And I'm looking for the emails, please. info@rabbismith.org. Let's get this rolling.